All right, everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of the Label Wiener Show. If you are watching this or listening to this, first of all, I want to say I'm honored, I am humbled that you're listening to me give my opinion on things. So, first of all, thank you so much. Obviously, the go-to topic for today of this first episode is Israel and what is going on in the Middle East. And honestly, a lot of this is just simply beyond baffling what is happening. The fact that there is an argument on this, I should say, is specifically what is going on right now between Israel and Hamas, specifically, is obviously, in my opinion, utterly ridiculous. In a lot of arguments, just in general in life, there is a middle ground, there is nuances, etc. In this particular case, there are no nuances. I believe that 100%. There is a right side, there is a wrong side, there is no in between. That's typically how things work when you have terrorists. There's not an in between with terrorism. It should be condemned by every single person in the entire world, regardless to any single thing that has happened prior. Terrorism, which is the specific act of targeting civilians, specifically, versus military action or actual resistance to what would be called an occupation, which we could get into later, what is actually an occupation, etc. But an actual resistance is the idea of resisting the military force of the person that is holding you, that is occupying you, that is holding you hostage. Obviously, this is not what happened. Hamas did not attack Israeli soldiers. I mean, they did that as well, but they went and butchered mostly Israeli civilians. They were not even after Israeli soldiers. They specifically went and just murdered everyone they could find and all the kibbutzim, etc. So there just seems to be a huge misunderstanding of what a resistance is and what terrorism is. That's like the first most basic thing in the entire world. Obviously, there are cases where resistance does make sense and people should resist. The Warsaw Ghetto in 1943 would be a great example of that. The Jews resisting the Nazis would make sense. That being said, the Jews did not go and just kill all the civilians. They were aiming at killing the Nazi soldiers, the SS soldiers that were going after them. Just a basic idea of how that worked. There are a few hilarious things that I'm saying, just off the bat. Things I've been thinking that I'm just like, how the hell is this going on? The first funniest verse that I've seen happen, and I keep on reading, obviously, and I'm very, very tuned into this entire situation, as I'm sure many people are, is the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry. Let me say that again. The Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry. How could we be trusting and believing any single thing that Hamas has said? Literally any single thing that they will say, that they have said. How do we trust a group of people that literally went? I mean, it's crazy that this has to keep being repeated, but it's the truth. Not only did they kill 1,100 people, right? Obviously, the manner in which they did it was the most gruesome, the most barbaric that a human being could possibly endure and has ever been perpetuated against human beings. Just as bad as the Nazis. There's no real difference. It was pretty much just as bad. Killing children in front of their parents, killing parents in front of their children, not just killing them or shooting them, cutting off kids' limbs in front of their parents while they're alive, cutting off parents' limbs in front of their kids while they're alive, burning babies alive, chopping off babies' heads, shooting kids in their cribs. I mean, it goes on and on. But aside from just that, they're also holding 240 hostages. So the Hamas controlled Gaza Health Ministry is busy being written up about what they hold in the news media while they sit and hold 240 civilians, like literal straight civilians, hostage. That is, and babies and elderly and Holocaust survivors. They are literally being you see them written about in the media like there's some sort of credible source. Like even though they are designated by most media outlets at this point as a terrorist group because of the fact the U.S. has designated them as a terrorist group, they still are like written about like Hamas has said this, Hamas will do that. They're negotiating. Hamas is negotiating. What are they negotiating for? Like Hamas does not want contrary to what people understand, Hamas does not want peace. I don't know why that is a complicated thing for people to realize. They do not want peace. They've never wanted peace. They are not the Palestinian Authority or Fatah. In fact, the Oslo Accords, Hamas was established in 1988. The Oslo Accords was reached in 1993. In 1988, when Hamas was established, or maybe it was 86, obviously in their charters, I'm sure everyone knows at this point, it calls for the complete eradication of the state of Israel from the river to the sea, no ands, ifs, ors, or buts. They're very, very clear about it. In 1993, when the Oslo Accords was happening, Hamas was not happy about that because they did not want a two-state solution. They didn't want that. So the first break of the actual 1993 Oslo Accords came in 1996. Who do you think it was broke the first peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis after the 1993 Oslo Accords? Hamas. It was in 1996. Why did they break the peace? Because they were in a fight with the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority was moving towards peace with Israel. Hamas did not want that, so they went and sabotaged the 1993 Oslo Accords. They have been at this their entire existence. Literally, their whole entire existence. Hamas has been focused only on no peace, eradication of Israel. Obviously, this has kept on going on and on. They are not the Palestinian people. For sure not the West Bank people, and that's why when Hamas took control in 2005, what do you think they did? They went and murdered every single member of Fatah and the Palestinian Authority that was ruling and took over government of Gaza when the Israeli army left. They went and murdered their own people. That's what they did. Because they have been separated from the West Bank. They're two different organizations. The PA and Hamas are two different organizations because Hamas wants nothing to do with the PA. The PA obviously claims to want a two-state solution, even though they don't really, and that's a whole different discussion because they've been offered a two-state solution and a peace agreement literally 7 times. In 1967, right after the Six-Day War, they were literally offered everything, including East Jerusalem, back. That includes the Temple Mount, the whole 9 yards. They were offered back. And they said no peace, no negotiations, no recognition of the state of Israel. They refused to do any of those things right after the war. And then they attacked again in 1973. So any single aspect to date of the reason why the Palestinians are occupied to date is 100% not a middle. There's nothing to talk about this. Is 100% the fault, straight up, of the Palestinians. Israel was granted a state. These are the facts. 1937, Palestinians were offered a state, declined it. 1947, UN partition. Arabs were offered a state. Jews were offered a state. Jews accepted. Arabs declined. They didn't want Israel having a state. 1948, Israel announces their independence. Within 24 hours, all 5 or 7 Arab states gang together to destroy the Jewish state, which was the new Jewish state in their infancy. Israel went and won that war against all odds. They gained more territory and therefore had more territory than they were originally given by the UN. All was quiet for 19 years. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. I believe Lebanon was involved, but definitely those 3, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, all went and attacked Israel again. Israel won the war again and took, obviously, one of the most incredible military operations of all time. I mean, hands down, the most incredible war probably ever. Maybe Alexander the Great back in the day had something more impressive, but they took the Sinai, they took the West Bank, they took the Golan, they took Gaza. I mean, they absolutely demolished the Arab nations. For those that aren't aware, Israel has been giving up land for peace their entire existence, literally. They went and gave back the Sinai to Egypt. And that's why they have peace with Egypt. Because Egypt was actually serious about having peace. Again, they're not best friends, but Egypt was serious about having peace. In 1980, Menachem Begin went and signed the peace treaty with the Egyptian prime minister, and there's been peace ever since. By the way, the Israeli blockade of Gaza, which is so intense and so terrible, you know who else also has the other blockade on Gaza, which is not Israeli, like actually the entire south border of Gaza? Egypt. The entire thing. They don't want any Palestinian ever entering their country. If you have to figure out a reason why, you could look to October 7th. They happen not to want terrorists coming into their country. It's a crazy concept, Egypt. I don't know why you don't want that, but I think you should totally let all the terrorists from Gaza and Hamas totally come into your country and just kill all your citizens. So with all, obviously, the talk of Israel being the blockade being so intense, the blockade is just as intense from Egypt, yet you will never hear a word about Egypt being the ones that are imposing just as strong contingencies and a blockade against the Palestinian people. Going back to what I was saying before, though, every single war the Arabs have ever fought was in an effort to beat Israel, eradicate Israel. They have lost every single one, and Israel has gained territory in every single one. This is the greatest act of being sore losers in the history of the world. Literally the history of the world. I don't know if there was a better, in what world, the whole concept of occupation, I don't understand this. Maybe someone can explain this to me. I never understood the idea of an occupation, the concept of an occupation when someone starts a war and then the defending people go and win the war and take over land of the person that started the war. Now they're occupiers. They have to go give back land. Honestly, what world are we in? I'm curious to understand this. I don't, even if it's a UN agreement, you want to tell me that if someone invades a land, they have to go give it back because they invaded a sovereign nation and they took territory? Fine. Example, Russia-Ukraine. Russia were to take over Ukraine. You want to say Russia is the occupier of Ukraine, doesn't legally have rights to that land? Okay, I hear it. But if Russia went, which they did, and started a war with Ukraine, Ukraine won that war and then took over Russia, Ukraine now has to give back Russia to the... I have no understanding of that. Every single war that has started, and I will keep on repeating this because it's the most important thing. If Israel was accepted in 1948 and the Arabs did not start a war, the Arabs would have everything they wanted right now. In 1967, if the Arabs didn't start a war, they would have everything they wanted right now. In 1973, if they didn't start a war, they would have everything they wanted now. FYI, Israel was 10 miles from Cairo in the 1973 war. They could have they were past the Suez Canal. They could have also taken that. They gave it back to the Egyptians. There's been 7 different 5 peace agreements since 1993 Oslo Accords, including giving 94% of the West Bank back to Gaza. 94% of the West Bank, or 91%, either one of those numbers. Mahmoud Abbas picked up, left, didn't counter. True story, true facts, you can look it up. Ehud Barak literally went and gave them everything they could have possibly wanted. Look, at this point, you're not getting back East Jerusalem. You could just give up on that. The Arab states have made so many poor decisions and want Israel to just be so nice to them and so cuddly to them and give them everything they want. They have made every single decision they have made terrible decision after terrible decision after terrible decision. Lost every single war they've had against Israel, despite the fact they outnumbered Israel by miles, right? The 1967 war, the 1948 war, the 1973 war, which, by the way, they started on Yom Kippur, very reminiscent of what they just did, starting this assault on Simchat Torah, as everyone knows. So they have waged one war after the next against Israel, lost every single war, and then have requested that Israel just give them back all the land that Israel gained in their wars against them. It's comical. The whole thing's literally comical. It's an actual joke if you just think about it. And now the whole thing is that where we've gotten to at this point is that the Palestinians, and you hear this going on a lot right now, Hamas, you hear the line, Israel's killing Palestinians, and these Palestinians have nothing to do with it. They have nothing to do with it. Look, I'll tell you this. There's a lot of Palestinians that don't have anything to do with it. Obviously, there's 2.3 million Palestinians. They're not responsible for Hamas to a degree, but they are also responsible for Hamas to a degree. That is how life works. This is your government. You elected this government. Your actions have consequences. Okay? That is a reality of life. You do hold some sort of responsibility by the fact that you have waged one war after the next for 75 years. You now have landed up in this situation. You elected a government which has chosen to turn your space and your land into a total terror base. You guys did that. You have not called for the ouster of your government, probably because they are victimizing you guys just as much as they're victimizing the Israelis. So the idea that the Palestinians are 100% not accountable. Look, I'll tell you this. There's the concept, in just to bring it to a totally different space, to bring an example and an analogy. In therapy, right? In the concept of therapy, let's say someone has a terrible parent, right? Who absolutely traumatized them, abused them, etc. There is a period of time, which makes sense and is very understandable, to heal, that you need 10, maybe 5, 10, 15 years to heal and move forward, right? And get it out of your system and really heal. That's really what it is. It's a healing process. And you do become, to a degree, in those moments, a victim. You do. You're in the blame game. However, there is a place, undeniably, where you need to start taking accountability. If you stay your entire life in that victimhood state, you will get nowhere. You will have a shitty life. You will sit there till the day you die just blaming someone that did something to you, and you're in your own prison because you have no ability to ever move forward because you're just sitting there as a victim. So there is a reasonable, obviously, the idea of like, oh, don't blame anyone at any point of your life is obviously stupid. People are in pain. They need to heal that pain. They should hold the people that did things to them accountable. And that's for sure. But there's a point where holding that person accountable then moves on, and you need to hold yourself accountable. You don't have to not hold the person that did it to you originally accountable, but you do need to still hold yourself accountable. The Palestinians for 75 years have been the child who will just die till the day they die, just blame the parent, and never move forward with their life in any capacity, and sit there and, blow up Israeli buses, be suicide bombers, be terrorists, on and on and on and on. They've had many opportunities to create peace with Israel, to, come to some sort of agreement where they can start getting, they're already getting aid from the U.S., but they can start getting even more aid from the U.S. If Gaza citizens and the Palestinians chose and said, you know something, at this point, we're not going to get what we want right now. We can't undo the past. Honestly, we made some really stupid fucking decisions. We are where we are, and we can't undo the past. And you know something? We are going to try for real peace, and we are going to start building our cities, focus on, creating communities and creating a environment and a infrastructure, schools, and good things that allow our communities to flourish. If that actually ever happened, first of all, they would never be in the situation they're in right now, which is a dire, shitty situation, which they will keep on blaming on Israel just forever. Like as if they had no ability to ever change that situation. They had no ability to ever make a smart decision at any point in their life to go and say, you know something, the money we just got from Israel, let's put this actually to good use. Instead of actually going and paying the suicide bombers in Israel and the people that kill Israelis, let's actually take the money we're giving these martyrs' families and let's actually go and put this to use to build a playground for our kids. Wouldn't that be a good idea? They have never ever done that. They have sat there in their misery and wallowed in their misery and seem intent on doing that forever as if something is going to change and keep on throwing terrorist attacks at Israel and blaming Israel. That is what they've done. The West Bank is slightly better than this than Hamas. The West Bank has claimed at least that they want peace. Obviously, Yasser Arafat in his day in 1996, by 93 in the Oslo Accords, it came 2 years later, recognized the state of Israel and agreed to wanting peace. And after Hamas actually broke that peace, Yasser Arafat, because he had to from pressure from Bill Clinton, went and arrested 2,000 Hamas militants that were doing the terrorist attacks in Israel because he had to answer to Clinton for why there were still terror attacks happening on Israel when Israel was coming to the table and trying to make peace. So we're in this, like, Hamas specifically has made it clear they're not even claiming to want peace. They're not, like, literally, they've never claimed to want peace at any point. They have destroyed the peace process specifically because they want to not make peace and want the eradication of the state of Israel. So this is just something, the inability to see right from wrong, good from evil. Israel in 1948 literally would have accepted whatever they were given. They were not given West Jerusalem at any point, right? The West Bank, they were not given at any point. They were only given West Jerusalem, I'm sorry. And they said, sure, we'll take it. We'll freaking take it, right? That's all they would have had right now if the Arabs would have accepted their own state. Like, done. And if you want to go forward before that to the British Mandate, there was 1937. The Arabs had an opportunity. They declined that too. From 1917 to 1937, terrorist attacks against Jews. I'm not saying the Jews were perfect. Again, a big part of this also is you hear people talking about what Israel has done. The bad things they have done, the terrible things they have done. Look, I want to say something. Israel maybe isn't perfect. In fact, no one is perfect. America's not either perfect. But there's a very big difference between not being perfect and not being a good entity, and not having good values, and not doing the right thing, and not being the voice and truth of goodness. America was founded on founded on ideas that were meant to be good, but had a lot of problems with it. It did. There was slavery, as the most obvious example. As we got better as a country, and as we lived on the values we created this country on, we eliminated slavery. And we have focused, and our goals and our missions from the minute we founded the country ultimately were those of treat people well, build good communities, build a striving nation, build good economies. That's what the goal of America was, freedom. That's ultimately what it was. And now you have, and it's the same thing with Israel. The inability to identify ultimately where the good is and where the evil is astounding. It's absolutely astounding. And it actually makes sense because you see what's going on in the college campuses with the liberals on the college campuses and the wokeness that's going on and the absolute disaster that is happening with the American youth. It actually makes total sense. All of these people, not all, a lot of these college kids think America is inherently bad. They argue America's inherently bad. Why? Because there was slavery, etc., etc. America did this bad. They did this to Iraq without the ability to understand that, no, America may have made mistakes, but America's a good country. They're a good country. We stand for good things. We want good things. And yeah, we maybe made mistakes. It's like saying that every person that made a mistake in the world is a bad person. No, that's not how it works. There's bad and there's good. And you can make a mistake. And Israel is the exact same thing. No one is saying they've never made a mistake in their life. Although it is overwhelming, not even close, that they have been, by far, the good guy. They have made minimal mistakes. They have tried making peace. Every single decade, they've tried something else to make peace. Like, straight. They have not been allowed to make peace, literally, because the Arabs will not concede to anything. Hamas will not concede to anything. The Palestinians will not concede to anything other than 100% return of all their land that they started a war about from 1967, which Israel actually offered to them right after 1967, and they declined. I'm 99% sure that's how it went down. But Israel will be the bad guy because, like, they're bombing Gaza right now because they're trying to get rid of evil terrorists. Like, it's just, it makes so much sense that the college kids on campuses right now see it that way because they inherently don't have the ability to distinguish between doing a bad thing and being a bad person. They think America is inherently bad because America may have done some bad things over the course of their 270-year existence. Israel is a bad state because they have done some things. I'm sure they have. I mean, no one's perfect through 75 years, but they've done some things like occupied territories that they won in a war that was started by the opposing enemy after being told for 35 years, by the way, that they want to eradicate them. So wars happen. They won land, and now they have to give back all that land. They're occupiers. They're terrible people. So Israel's terrible. I mean, they're absolutely horrifically terrible. They only built for 75 years, right after the Holocaust, a decimated nation, only built one of the greatest economies in the world, is a leader in tech, go to Tel Aviv, if you're not sure, one of the most beautiful cities, arguably, in the world. Total freedom. 20% of Israelis are Arabs, straight up. No one likes to talk about that. Gays, lesbians, everyone welcome. All those people, if they walked into one Arab state, would have their head on a stake within 1 minute. And you have queers for Palestine. That's the greatest part about this whole. You have queers for Palestine. Fucking morons. There's no other way to say it. Like, just freaking idiots. The inability to see straight is literally backwards. So, we're in a world where we have the most basic fundamental understandings. Like, we had problems in this generation, let's say the last generation and before that, where a little progressivism was needed, right? It makes sense. I agree with that. There was there were things wrong, let's say, in the last generation. And before that, there was things that could be made better. But now we're at a place where, so we let gays or gay people get married, which totally fine with. Why the hell should we not? And now it's 10 years later become okay to cut off your penis. And we should agree that you're a woman. That's where we've gone. I don't know how the fuck we got here. What happened that we all of a sudden made that okay? But either way, not to go too far off on a tangent about that, but the moral confusion over the basic inherent good, what is the basic inherent good and what is the basic inherent evil is astounding. People don't like to talk about, by the way, just FYI, after 1948, okay, after Israel won the independence war against, I think it was 7 Arab countries, Israel did not have control of the West Bank, which the Arabs have been saying Palestinians have been saying is theirs for who knows how long at this point, right? 56 years or something. Who had control of the West Bank? Jordan. Jordan, Arab country. I don't remember the Palestinians or ever hear about the Palestinians complaining to Jordan, FYI, that they're occupying their land. That was not a topic of conversation at all. I don't know why. It's just something that's interesting. Between Jordan occupying their land for 19 years till Israel won the 1967 war, and Egypt putting as strong of a blockade on Gaza as Israel is, I don't know how all of this attention, everything is on Israel. It's all their fault. It's always their fault, no matter how much peace they're going to try to make. I want to say another thing that is actually also very interesting. I'm sure people have thought of. I'm not saying I'm the first person to say this, but it is interesting, and maybe you haven't heard it. There's 22 Arab countries, I believe, in the Middle East. There's obviously definitely at least 5 surrounding Israel. All of them can take in, they could take in Arabs, if the Palestinians specifically. Not one of them have offered to take in the Palestinians. Right now, as Israel is bombing the absolute shit out of Gaza, and all these Palestinians are literally stuck getting bombed because there's an evil enemy that does need to be killed, and killing an enemy with civilians being there is a different planet, in case people can't understand, than walking in and just killing civilians on purpose. I know it's a difficult thing to comprehend. But not one Arab nation has offered to, at least for right now, allow Palestinians into their country. If you want to know the Jewish nation and why I believe people are jealous of us, and this is really what it comes down to, this is where the anti-Semitism is. If you want to know why, if there was ever a threat to Jews anywhere in the world in any real capacity, clear capacity of the eradication of the Jewish people, of a large sum of Jewish people being killed, without question, it would not even be a conversation. Israel would open its borders to every single Jew. It's one country. One. Not only that, every single home in Israel would open up their doors to every single Jewish person that walked in and let them stay there for 6 months. If you don't believe me and you're watching this and you're not Jewish, you could ask any single Jewish person. They will tell you that this is 100% accurate. One Jewish state, if Jews anywhere were being killed in real numbers, Israel would open its doors, the people would open their doors. 22 Arab countries, not one has offered to let in a Palestinian. I'm sorry, actually, Egypt just let in 91 Palestinians who are about to die to put them on ventilators because they're the most critically injured. Actually, crazy story. I was just with, I went with Saquon Barkley's family, Flex, to the football game. Giants versus Washington, not Redskins anymore because we've eliminated that word, Commanders. It was 2 Sundays ago, and I went with Shmuley Warren, my co-host from the Mislabeled podcast, and I don't think I haven't really told that. I maybe told this story to 5 people, and we did the tailgate for them. So we brought the meat. I mean, they brought their own stuff, but we brought a lot of food for them because they wanted some food to be on our grill. We keep kosher, so we couldn't put, obviously, the non-kosher food on our grill just because of Jewish law. So we brought our own grill, and all the food we bought for them was kosher, and we were making the food. Shmuley is cutting a steak for them. And like an hour, like the tailgate started at 11. At like 11:45, we're like getting into the swing of things. It has to happen. It always happens. Shmuley's cutting a steak. Boom, slices open his finger. One of those where it is not a scrape. It's not like his finger's hanging off, but it's clear like blood oozing out. Like we need first aid immediately. So right away, as we were in the players' parking lot, which is actually very, very difficult to get into. That's a whole nother story how we got in. But like the cops didn't want to let us in because we didn't have the exact pass. Either way. We get in. It's very hard to get into that. And happens to be the minute Shmuley cut his finger, a car pulls up and 2 Jews come out of the car and they're wearing tzitzis, which are the strings that, the Jews wear. Sometimes you see them wear. And they're headed to the game. And so I right away ran over to these guys and I just said right away, I said, hey guys, what's up? I'm from, as you can see. We are with the Barkley family. My buddy just literally just cut his hand open, his finger open. Do you happen to have a first aid in your car by any chance? Band-Aids, anything? They're like, oh, we're so sorry, we don't have. So I ran back to Shmuley just to be like, okay, what's the next step? Saquon Barkley's father comes over to me. And he says to me, he's like, how do you know those guys? I said, what do you mean, how do I know them? He's like, how do you know them? I said, I have no idea who they are. He's like, what do you mean? You don't know who those guys were? I said, I have no clue who they are. And he looks at me and says, man, this is the Jewish people. This is what it is. Like, this is what it is, guys. This is what it is. We need to follow these things in our community. We need to be doing the same thing. We got to learn from you guys. Verbatim. This is what he said. And I thought that was so powerful to hear as like a Jewish person, that like to us, to me, it wasn't even a thing. It literally was not a thing. I just ran over to someone that I saw wearing the strings. It was automatic. And by the way, if they would have had a first aid kit, they would have immediately given it to me without question. They would have missed part of the game, I'm sure. I don't know if I would have told them to miss the whole game, but I'm sure they would have missed the first 6 minutes of the first quarter if it meant helping Shmuley out. And honestly, that is the Jewish people. And I at the end of the day, we're 15 million people in the world. I was watching a clip the other day from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said that in the last 30 years, the Jews have won, we're 0.2% of the world's population. We have won 25% of Nobel Peace Prizes. Again, we're 0.2%. We've won 25% of Nobel Peace Prizes in the world in the last 30 years. And it makes sense that there's conspiracy theories and everything, because how the hell are Jewish people so successful? That's really what it comes down to. How? If they're such a minority, how the hell are they so successful? And the answer really is that our values and our commitment and our dedication and the value, the way we choose to live our life with intention every single day, understanding that it is a short life. It is 80 to 90 years max, and then you are gone. And we need to live those 80 to 90 years wisely, with intention, putting our best effort in, putting our best foot forward every day. We've been gifted, obviously, to have brains. We're going to use those wisely. Community, we've been able to do a lot. Yeah, so the other great thing that I'm saying, by the way, that I love to see, just shows the world's hypocrisy and absolute ridiculousness. When you see there are 240 hostages with Hamas. By the way, again, they're keeping civilian hostages. 240 of them in Israel. 240 hostages in Israel. The first hilarious thing that you see is Qatar is leading negotiations. Qatar is mediating negotiations. It's the greatest thing in the world. Qatar is literally harboring the head of Hamas. The actual head of Hamas's regime, like 5 of them are in Hamas living in palaces. And Qatar is the one leading the negotiations to release the hostages. Hey, by the way, don't you think you should tell those people to probably leave your country? Wouldn't that be a good idea if you're like, would be a real negotiator? Somehow or another, they are the negotiating party with America and Hamas. I'm not saying that I know that much about Qatar. I don't need to know that much about them to know that they are harboring the top of Hamas, which have said from those palaces in Qatar that we will do this again and again and again. They've said that straight. They literally, it's not like there's a one-time thing that there's reason to believe that if Israel doesn't attack Hamas and lets them off the hook, so to speak, with this, that, and doesn't kill Palestinian civilians in the process, then this will stop. I mean, they have said very, very clearly they will do this again and again. There's no reason to believe that they wouldn't, obviously, and there is no nation in the world that would not walk in and do exactly what Israel is doing right now. There is no, in no world would any single country not do that. But the ceasefire, you're hearing the calls for the ceasefire right now. And I was telling someone this the other day, and I'm shocked a little bit that people don't fully understand the specifics of this. Hamas does not believe in any capacity that they could beat the Israeli army. They're not stupid. They know they can't beat the Israeli army. They don't have the infantry. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the money. They don't have the U.S. support. They have no capacity to do it. They're not idiots. Because of that, Hamas relies on a very specific thing. Not to be a broken record, but they rely on the concept of civilians, human shields, even though I'm sick and tired of hearing that word, even though it's 1,000% true, but just human shields. I don't mind. It's coming out of my ears at this point. But it's true. It needs to be kept on being said, to be honest. But why does Hamas use human shields? Why? What's the reason why they use human shields? Because they know if they use human shields and there are Palestinians getting killed, the international community will call for a ceasefire. The ceasefire concept is literally how they plan to stick around. That is how they expect to stick around. If they kept their military infrastructure away from the civilian population, they know they would be destroyed within 1 minute. They're not stupid. The only way to prevent that is kill civilians, international calls for a ceasefire, UN comes against Israel, a bunch of dumbass college kids run around in America and march for things they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they get a ceasefire. So now they get to restock, replenish, they keep getting to govern Gaza. Round and round we go. Calling for a ceasefire is exactly what Hamas wants. Hamas is winning the war if they get a ceasefire. It literally was their tactic all along. Do you think Hamas invaded Israel thinking that Israel wouldn't retaliate? No, they invaded Israel knowing Israel would retaliate, didn't give a flying shit about how many of their civilians would die, because they know at least 1,000, let's call it, civilians will die. They know one civilian will die, right? They chose to do it anyways, because they're okay with their civilians dying. And now it becomes the whole question of how many civilians have to die. Like, I don't know, the evil has to be rooted out. I don't understand that question. That question is a stupid question. Who could put a number on how many civilians have to die to put out evil? The answer is none. That's the answer. As many as it takes. As bad as that sounds. It's not that I don't care about the civilians, but like, what's the other answer? I hear this question. I was listening to Piers Morgan the other day. He's like sitting there saying, like, there's a big moral quandary of what do we do about the civilians? Because civilians are getting killed. So Israel, do you think there's an angle where Israel should stop their bombing? So Hamas gets to continue to exist. That's basically what you're saying. That's your outcome. Hamas exists afterwards. He said a similar thing, which was, don't you think you're radicalizing the youth and there's going to be another Hamas? Oh, so we should let Hamas stay in power because there's going to be another Hamas coming in 30 years, so we should keep the current Hamas in power. I mean, who the fuck is so stupid to think of that? No, you kill the terrorists right now, you deal with the evil and cross that bridge when you get there. Not, oh, let's leave the current threat right here. It's like, oh, there are bugs and rats over here. If you kill them, by the way, there's going to be eggs. They're going to come back in 2 years, so let's not kill the rats right here. Let's just leave them over here, and it's better if we leave the rats right here because there's going to be rats again in 2 years. It's literally what it is. And yes, I'm calling Hamas rats, in case you didn't get the analogy. So these questions, some of these questions are the stupidest things that people have their intellect and their ability to analyze situations are of the, they need to, and this is why Ben Shapiro, by the way, is so successful. I literally think Ben Shapiro doesn't even use 70% of his brain capacity when he's fighting with these people. It's like you're a moron. Exactly like I just illustrated with the rats. So we're gonna leave them there. That's the outcome of his question. It's like, oh, Israel has to stop killing civilians. Why? So we should continue to let a regime that has threatened our eradication and just went and pillaged people, burned babies alive, burned full families, has 240 civilian hostages right now. Hamas right now, at this moment, all the civilian population, all the Palestinian civilians could be saved. This fucking specific instant. Hamas surrenders. They're a terrorist regime. Everyone knows that. They surrender, put down their arms, get back the hostages. Israeli airstrike stop. I guarantee you. I want one reporter to ask Netanyahu on camera and say to him, if Hamas surrenders right now and gives back the 240 hostages, will you stop bombing Gaza? I guarantee you his answer will be yes. And then people are like, oh, Israel, Netanyahu said recently that Israel's going to have security presence in Gaza. Oh, he's trying to occupy Gaza. First of all, you know something? He fucking should, probably. Why would you not? Which country wouldn't take control of a terrorist regime that has threatened Israel since 1986 or 88? That would tolerate them living after this and just let them do their business again. But he's not even saying that. He's saying, no, we want Gaza to do their own thing. We want Gaza to be fully governed. But yes, until we are sure that there will actually be a government which will not try to kill Israel, we will make sure that we have a military presence so that this doesn't happen again. This is like a controversial statement. How is that controversial? Who the fuck wouldn't say that that's basic common sense? It doesn't. So what we should do is we should eradicate Hamas and just just assume that the next group of people will just treat Israel perfectly, and we should just leave it up to God about what exactly is going to happen. It's actually absurd. Some of these arguments that you hear are absurd on their face. And the best one, there's two different types of arguments it comes down to, really. Some people have the argument, yeah, what Hamas did, this is the Piers Morgan argument, what Hamas did on October 7th was terrible, but Israel's doing right now is also terrible. I agree with Israel's right to defend itself, but by the way, what they're doing right now is terrible. No, Hamas can literally surrender and Israel will not do anything terrible. That could easily be the result. And Israel trying to kill Hamas is not a terrible thing. Hamas putting civilians right in front of them and literally having rocket launchers, it's documented. This is not like having rocket launchers right in the middle of playgrounds. That's a terrible thing. And the inevitable outcome of that is going to be civilians dying, which Hamas wants, by the way, FYI, so that they can get a ceasefire. Like all the dumbasses around the world are now running around talking about, so this way we can keep a terrorist regime in power. It's utter idiocy. The whole thing is there's no nuance between good and evil. There's no nuance. There's no middle ground between good and evil. That was what I was saying earlier. Okay, so Israel might have done some bad things. Again, I'm sure you could point something out in 75 years Israel's made a mistake on. No one is perfect. Israel, though, inherently is good. The U.S. is inherently good. And that's why, by the way, they are allies. Because they are both recognized that they're inherently good countries that want the same things. At the end of the day, any ceasefire, anything without the exchange of the hostages is a huge mistake. You even see Blinken now. I saw today, Blinken said, saying the most direct line he said to date, that we have to protect civilians. You could tell the U.S. Is pressuring Israel more. While they're still on Israel's side, they're caving. They're not caving fully, and I'm not saying they will cave fully, but they're putting more pressure. And Israel should, straight up, they should not give in to the pressure one bit. 240 hostages back immediately. That's the only way you get shit. Literally, you do not get a drink of water as far as I'm concerned. You don't get a cup of water. You get nothing. Hostages back or nothing. They should give back, you cannot hold 240 hostages. And again, this is not about Palestinian civilians. I'm sure, again, a lot of them, no one wants them to get killed. No one. That doesn't benefit anyone. In fact, Israel 100% would want the Palestinians to live peacefully, have great lives. The Israeli Arabs have great lives. I was in Israel 4 weeks ago. And the day after the October 7th attack, it was Sukkot when it happened, which is the Jewish holiday. And the Israeli Arab came in. He built our sukkah, which is the thing we sit in on the holiday. And he came in and he was so nice. He was so nice. You could tell he felt so bad. And you could tell he's a guy that likes living in Israel. He likes it. He can work. He supports his family. It was very powerful to see that. And when he left, I told my friend, I'm like, I feel bad for this guy. I do. He's uncomfortable right now. He has to live in uncomfort because his people, or people that he is associated with adjacently, just did what they did on yesterday. And he now has to walk around uncomfortable. I went to a pizza store. They told me straight, a bunch of Israeli Arabs didn't want to come into work. They were uncomfortable. They were scared. I understand why they were scared. Even though, let's be clear, you don't see Israeli civilians or Israeli idea people being suicide bombers. You have never seen an Israeli soldier parading a naked woman through the street. You have never seen Israeli soldiers burn kids alive. You have never seen any of the barbarism that was and medieval practices that were committed by Hamas on October 7th. You have never one time seen any of those things from an IDF soldier. That should tell you everything. You've never seen, like I said, an IDF soldier go the Intifada, just blowing themselves up. There's a very clear, again, if you can't understand, there's a very clear difference between morality and good and evil. In this situation, your brain is broken. Literally, you are beyond repair. Straight up, your brain is actually broken. There's no way, you can't help those people. There's nothing literally to help. Oh, occupation, this, therefore it justifies October 7th. The resistance justifies that? No, a resistance justifies fighting military to take back land. That's what a resistance does. Resistance does not justify ever taking 240 civilian hostages, killing their parents in front of them, and doing all sorts of other heinous actions. I don't have to get into each one. 200 out of the 1,400 killed will never be able to be identified. They don't think will ever be able to be identified. That's how badly their bodies are mutilated. Animals, straight animals. There's no in between. Animals. You may not like Israeli soldiers. They're not freaking animals. That's just a fact. Oh, by the way, 1939. For all those, you hear the pre-1948 people. Oh, yeah, you're right. We didn't accept the state then, but we were living in peace. So right now we should have the one-state solution, which is the Arabs and the Jews living together. Oh, yeah, 1939, right before the Holocaust, I think it was 38. The Grand Mufti met with Hitler to discuss how to do the final solution of the Jews in Palestine, which was, by the way, never a state. I mean, that to me is not as important, but there obviously was never actually a state of Palestine. It was a geographically named location. But again, whatever. That to me is a little bit more semantics. Um, but at the end of the day, this is to take the word of Hamas in any capacity seriously is an absolute joke. Straight up, you're. I don't want the spot to be using like just words like stupid words like you're a moron or whatever. But some of these things are inconceivable. How anyone could seriously take what Hamas says in any capacity and trust it in any way, like as a real source and trustable basis for information. At the end of the day, here we are. So do not get confused by the ridiculous, stupid moral comparisons of Hamas just looking to eradicate Israel, kill all Jews, and Israel trying to protect their country, kill the evil people, and civilians getting killed in the process, because Hamas will make sure that happens so they can get their ceasefire and stay in power. Don't confuse that, because that's the mistake. And you'll hear this argument again and again. Every time you have the conversation, by the way, it's but Israel's killing civilians. Like they can't even focus on the actual problem of how this would all stop, which is like the beginning. Yeah, maybe they should, Hamas, which is a terrorist regime, should surrender, by the way. FYI, that would stop everything. No, it just goes straight to like... So, this is, where we are, but bottom line, I'm hoping to God. Netanyahu sounds like he's standing very, very strong, like he's not giving in, not even a chance. But the truth is, the longer they go, the more difficult it gets at the end of the day, because the U.S. will put more pressure. But I have a feeling Netanyahu at this point is not going to give in no matter what. And he shouldn't. He should not. Like literally nothing. Like the corridors they're doing now are good, like letting the civilians go. Hamas, by the way, also did that for Israelis on October 7th. They didn't at all, actually. They didn't let anyone go. They just killed everyone, FYI. And they would kill everyone if they were in Israel right now. Literally everyone. They would not spare one person. They would not let a civilian go through a corridor. They would not have a corridor for 41 seconds. Like literally. And the idea that people can't get that through their brain is unbelievable. So, yeah, it's important to keep the moral clarity. Like, it's really, really important, because you'll hear people talking and they get people thinking. And I'll be honest, a lot of people aren't that good at, like, the analytical part of, like, breaking things down. So it's hard for them to argue against these people. So they kind of, like, feel stumped and, like, almost start, like, maybe there is, like, a shred to this. Maybe, like, there's, like, a self-doubt that gets in the way. I was like, no, there should be no self-doubt. Like, I'm assuring you of that right now. Like, zero self-doubt. Because good is good, and you do, whoever's watching this, know what good is, and evil is evil, and you who's watching this know what evil is, and any argument to the contrary is exactly what Nazi sympathizers did in 1940. That's what they did. You think there were no Nazi sympathizers in 1941? Oh, we have to take over this. Oh, we have to... Forget about the final solution of Jews. There were other things going on as well. We have to capture Russia. We have to do it with all the reasons and all the excuses and all the bullshit. Of course there were. And I'm sure people got confused then too. Say enough things enough times, make enough stupid arguments that sound like they're good to enough stupid people start believing it. So, it's obviously a perilous time for Jews right now. Oh, by the way, before I go and then end this, Pakistan just expelled literally 1.7 million people to Afghanistan. Actually, factually going on in the world right now, 1.7 million Afghans were just expelled back to Afghanistan. I saw a lot of news on that on CNN yesterday, and MSNBC also, about how that went down. It's unbelievable. Oh, and then the last thing is you have the whole Nakba. The Nakba is one of the great stories of all time, which the basis of it is after 1948, and the Arabs went and all the Arab countries went and literally waged war after Israel announced their independence, which was allowed by the UN partition of 1947, and the British ended their mandate in Palestine. The Arabs all waged war in Israel, as I said earlier. Arabs lost, which they did not expect to happen. But before they lost, they told all their citizens to leave Jerusalem. That's what they told them to do, to leave, because they don't want them. You see, they were slightly more normal back then, apparently, because they actually didn't want civilians to die, at least their own civilians. They told them all to leave. And Israel won, and they weren't able to come back because Israel then had, taken over, had won the war. Now, to be fair, I am sure there probably were some of those. Again, I call things as they are. I'm not here to bullshit, say things differently. I am sure that there was a nice handful that were expelled from their homes. I'm sure. I'll tell you a little secret though. When you lose a war after you start it, sometimes shit happens that you don't love. It's a reality of life. Again, it just goes back all to the same thing. No accountability. Everything is someone else's fault. Let's blame the other person, not try to actually look inward. Build beautiful cities. Stop engaging in violence. Use all the money we're getting to build great communities, great schools, great healthcare. Let's just use all that money to build tunnels and fucking do stupid things that just keeps having violence going. Oh, and I see people right now proposing a two-state solution. It's the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, right now is when a two-state solution, by the way, is going to happen after this. No, there's no two-state solution happening for at least 30 years. In case you didn't figure that part out, not going to happen. The trust factor has been backed up a little bit, a few minutes over what just occurred. So yeah, that's where we are. But guys, on to the next episode. There's also a lot, FYI, happening with Trump. We'll discuss that on the next episode. That's obviously an interesting topic as well. So for the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening. For those that had any confusion, I hope I was helpful. If you have any questions or any comments, I would love to actually hear them. I really love to hear them. If you say stupid shit, I will not answer you. If you don't have a sound intellectual argument, we will not have a conversation. I'm just letting you know that right now. It has to be intellectual, it has to be sound. I will engage with anyone who has a sound intellectual discussion. And if I don't engage with you because I have 1,000 things going on actually, it doesn't mean, honestly, anything, but I will try to engage to the best of my ability. But yeah, thank you so much for listening and watching, guys. Have a great, great day. Peace. To the next.